Adventure Time, a show that built its entire legacy on hiding genuine devastation inside a cartoon about a kid and his dog. I've talked about Finn, I've talked about the Ice King, I've talked about Marceline, but today I want to talk about a character who I genuinely believe is one of the most tragic figures in the entire show, and yet somehow, whenever people list the saddest characters in Adventure Time, his name almost never comes up. And I get it, he's annoying. He screams, he's grating in a way that's almost designed to make you not want to pay attention to him. But that's exactly the point. This is the story of Lemongrab, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are never going to look at this weird screaming lemon the same way again. Let's start at the beginning. Princess Bubblegum created Lemongrab. That's not up for debate. She made him in a lab, and by her own admission, he was her very first attempt at creating life. And the result, he came out wrong. She looked at the living being she created and called him a mistake out loud. And look, I'm not here to drag PB because I've already talked at length about how her emotional awareness isn't exactly her strongest quality. But this one hits different because Lemongrab didn't ask to be made. He didn't ask to be broken. He just got born, got called defective, and got shipped off to an empty castle. That's it. That's his whole origin story. Think about what that means for a second. He came into the world with no one to teach him how to behave, no peers to learn from, no emotional framework for anything he was inevitably going to feel. He was just dropped into existence, fully formed, completely alone, and every single unhinged thing that comes out of his mouth from that point forward is the direct result of that. Now, the first time we actually meet this guy is in Too Young, which most people remember purely for Finn and Bubblegum's whole situationship, and fair enough. But there's a scene in there that I think gets completely slept on. After Lemongrab takes over the Candy Kingdom, he walks through the halls with this stiff, rigid posture, and every single decision he makes is completely disconnected from how a normal person would react to anything. He sends someone to the dungeon for spilling something. He screams at servants for existing near him. He cannot modulate his response to literally anything. And here's the thing, that's not cruelty, that's not even really anger, that's someone who genuinely does not understand the relationship between cause and response. He was never taught proportionality, he was never taught empathy, he was never taught that there's supposed to be a filter between what you feel and how you explode it all over everyone around you. His screaming isn't a character quirk, his screaming is the only emotional language he has ever known. But then we get to You Made Me, and this is the episode. This is the one that changes everything. If Too Young introduces Lemongrab as a walking punchline, You Made Me is the show turning around and going, no, wait, sit down, look closer. The episode starts with Lemongrab secretly watching the candy people sleep. And yes, on the surface, that is absolutely unhinged behavior. PB calls him out for it and demands an explanation. And then he says something that I genuinely think about a lot. This dude has been living completely alone in a castle this entire time. He didn't choose that. He was assigned there, sent away because he was too difficult, too broken, too wrong to be around the people who made him. And in his isolation, the only thing he could think to do was watch other people exist just so he didn't feel like he was completely by himself. That's not a villain doing villain things. That's one of the loneliest beings in all of Ooh, doing the only thing he can think of to cope with a loneliness so total that most of us honestly can't even imagine it. PB's response is to make him someone. She creates Lemongrab 2, and in doing so, she accidentally gives the original Lemongrab the first genuine relationship he has ever had in his entire life. And here's where it gets genuinely beautiful for a brief moment, because when the two Lemongrabs finally meet each other, they immediately, completely, and without any hesitation just get each other. They finish each other's sentences, they communicate in this weird shorthand that nobody else could ever understand because nobody else has ever been Lemongrab. For the first time in his existence, he is not alone. He has someone who was made from the same brokenness, someone who speaks his language, someone who doesn't need him to perform a normal he was never given the tools to pull off. It's one of the most genuinely wholesome moments in the whole show. and it's buried inside an episode full of screaming and absurdist shenanigans because that's Adventure Time, baby. It trusts you to find the thing underneath all the noise, but keep this moment in mind because the show is about to use it to do something absolutely brutal. The two of them rule Lemongrab together. They have children, lemon children. They build a whole civilization of their own, which is, I'll be honest, pretty goofy and deeply weird to look at, but in the context of what Lemongrab is and where he came from, it's also kind of miraculous. He found a way to not be alone. He built something, but then it starts to fall apart because the original Lemongrab is not well. He never was. And without any real emotional development, without anyone actually helping him grow into something healthier, his relationship with the only person who understands him begins to completely corrode. He becomes possessive, controlling. He starts treating Lemongrab 2 the same way he himself was treated, like an object, like a resource, like something that exists purely to fill the hole in his loneliness rather than as an actual person with his own thing going on. And I want to be careful here because I think the show is doing something really specific. Lemongrab was never given the tools to be in a healthy relationship. He was never shown what care actually looks like. So when he finally has someone to care about, he defaults to the only dynamic he's ever known: control, isolation, and desperate need. He doesn't know how to love someone. He only knows how to hold on so tight that he breaks what he's holding. And then in one of the most messed up sequences in the entire show, he eats him. He eats Lemongrab too. And the show doesn't play it as horror exactly, it plays it as tragedy. There's a shot of the original Lemongrab afterward, bloated and misshapen, having literally consumed the only relationship he ever had. And he is not triumphant, he is not satisfied, he just sits there, alone again, back to square one. And I just think that is absolutely devastating, man. He destroyed the only good thing in his life because he didn't know how not to. And that is not a punchline, that is one of the most heartbreaking things Adventure Time ever committed to. And it happened to a character most people only remember for a screaming meme. Absolutely wild that this show got away with stuff like that. Now I have to bring up the parallel here because I'd be doing this video a serious disservice if I didn't. Simon Petrikov, the Ice King. If you've seen my video on him, you know I think he's one of the most goated character studies in the whole show. A fundamentally good man who was slowly stripped of himself by something he couldn't control, who hurt people not out of malice but out of damage he was never given the chance to stop. Lemongrab is the same story told from the complete opposite direction. Simon was made wrong by an external force, something that invaded him from the outside in. Lemongrab was made wrong from the inside out, built that way from the jump, and then abandoned before he ever had a shot at becoming something different. Both of them were technically antagonists at various points. Both of them were played for laughs constantly, and both of them, when you actually look at what the show is doing under the surface, are the show asking a question that has no comfortable answer. What do we owe to the people we break? Simon had a before. He had a version of himself to mourn. Lemongrab never had that luxury. He has never known a version of himself that was okay. He doesn't have a before the crown, he just has this. And in some ways that makes what he carries even heavier because there's nothing to look back on. No good old days, just the empty castle and the screaming. So then we get to the mountain. And this is the episode I think deserves way more credit than it gets because it's the moment the show decides Lemongrab is owed an actual interior life and not just a tragic exterior played for gags. After being rebuilt following all the carnage of everything with Lemongrab 2, he goes to this mountain and the episode essentially becomes a meditation on what it would feel like to actually be Lemongrab on the inside. He experiences visions. He goes through something that in any other show you'd just call a full-on spiritual crisis. And at the peak, he encounters something that tells him essentially that he is enough. That the broken, loud, wrong version of him that exists is still a version worth being. And Lemongrab cries, not screaming, not the unhinged rant, just quiet, actual grief. The show took its most absurdist, punchline adjacent character, sat him down alone on a mountain, and gave him a moment of genuine self-acceptance. And then it moved on because that's what Adventure Time does. It gives these characters their moment and trusts you to carry it. Here's the thing I keep coming back to with Lemongrab. The show never fully redeems him in the traditional sense. He doesn't get a Marceline arc where the audience slowly falls in love with him. He doesn't get a clean, elegant tragedy like Simon's. He stays uncomfortable. He stays loud and grating and genuinely hard to watch, and I think that's completely on purpose. Because the show is making an argument that some people are just going to be hard to love, that some people are going to be created broken and then abandoned before they ever get the tools to be any other way. And those people are still going to feel loneliness. They're still going to reach for connection in all the wrong ways. They're still going to go apeshit and destroy the good things they find because they were never taught how to hold on to something gently. And we're allowed to find that hard to watch. That's fine, but we're not allowed to stop seeing it. Lemongrab was a mistake that was told he was a mistake and then left alone with that information for the rest of his life. That's not a joke. That's not a goofy screaming meme. That's one of the saddest things I've ever seen a cartoon pull off. If you made it this far, genuinely thank you. Subscribe if you want more of this and leave a like while you're down there.